What's up, Internet? As you can see, we finally got some snow. Well, today I want to talk to you guys about... yeah. I'm back and snow-free, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about monsters. No, not real monsters, although it was just the holidays and I'm sure we all have stories. No, today I want to talk to you about book monsters. So monsters and stories have been with us for as long as we can remember. In fact, some of the first stories were literally just about things in the night that come and eat your children. You know, feel-good stuff. And I figured it would be pretty cool to talk to you about some of my favorite series and books that have monsters in them. And to make it even more fun, I brought with me today the snowball thrower herself, Anastasia, to share a few of her favorite books and series. So the first series I want to talk about is the Demonata series by Darren Shan. And the first book in the series is Lord Loss. And it's a really great series. I started reading it after I read Cirque du Freak books a few years ago. And I actually prefer this one to the Cirque du Freak books. It follows a character named Grubbs Grady. He actually comes home to find his family all murdered, and there's a demon waiting to play chess with him. And it goes from there to all kind of crazy happenings. It's actually a really good series, and the only problem I really had with it was it sometimes skips around. It actually follows three main characters, and then there's a few books that actually kind of jump timelines a little bit. But other than that, it's a great series to follow. There is quite a bit of gore in it, which, I mean, I love, and he writes it so well that you feel like you're really there in the moment. I definitely recommend these books, and I think you'll have a fun ride with them.
And three. So the first series that I want to talk about is the Percy Jackson series. It's technically not a horror book, but it is filled with a bunch of monsters. This book is very sentimental to me because it's the first novel that I ever read, so I highly recommend it for beginner readers or readers who don't read books that often. It's about a boy named Percy Jackson who goes to a camp of demigods after finding out that he's the son of Poseidon. So it's a book filled with a bunch of monsters and creatures, and it's a really easygoing and interesting book.
So the next series, me and Anastasia argued over a little bit. We both love Patricia Briggs a lot, and it was hard to say who was going to do which series. I ended up letting her have the Mercy Thompson books, and I got to take the Alpha and Omega books, which is kind of nice because I actually like Anna and Charles, the main characters, a little bit more than Mercy and Adam, who I love. But there's something about Anna and Charles' relationship. They really come together to fix a lot of their problems that they have separately. The series actually starts in an anthology called On the Prowl, and that has a short story introducing Anna. Patricia Briggs writes about mostly werewolves in her urban fantasy. She does have vampires and some other mythological creatures in there, but her focus is on mostly werewolves. And Anna and Charles are an amazing couple, like I said. She's an Omega wolf, and Omegas are kind of outside of the hierarchy of the pack, as werewolves tend to get very aggressive. An Omega wolf can actually calm the pack down, and they're really good for an alpha wolf, which Charles is. The series is really great. It starts out with Anna coming from an abusive pack and then getting accepted into the Merrick's pack, which is the head of all of the werewolves in America. And then Charles is actually sort of a special case because he's kind of the assassins of the werewolf world, or the assassin of the werewolf world. And he has a hard job because if a werewolf gets out of line or a pack gets out of line, he has to go and take care of it. And it sort of troubles him. And Anna really comes in and can help him with that. It's a great series. I believe there's 3 or 4 books out in it right now. And I really can't wait for her to write the next one.
So I won the argument, so I get to talk about the awesome Mercy Thompson series. It's a series mainly about werewolves, but it has a lot of other awesome monsters in it. The main character herself, Mercy, who is a shapeshifter, is an awesome mechanic who can turn into a coyote. 2 of my favorite characters is Stefan, who is this vampire who helps Mercy out sometimes, and Warren, who's this gay werewolf, and where else can you read about that? I really love this series, and I highly recommend it to anybody, no matter what you read.
This book series, Anastasia and I had a bit of an argument again, but I'm bigger, so I won. It's actually one of my favorite book series that I've ever read. If I do a top 5 books, this will be in the list, and that is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This book series is amazing. I think there's 14 or 15 books out right now, and after you read the first one, you will want to buy the entire series. The first book is actually Stormfront, and I don't have a copy of it because I tend to give it away to people to make them read things that I love. The way that Jim Butcher handles monsters in his stories is similar to other urban fantasies. I mean, he humanizes them a bit, but the way that he handles magic and the way that he handles action scenes, it really makes you care about the moment. You really worry about the character themselves. And then Harry Dresden, there's so much you can say about him. He never knows when to shut his mouth, no matter what supernatural thing he's up against, which makes him really endearing, but you also kind of understand why he's usually broken before the next book starts. This book series is truly amazing. If you don't read anything else that I tell you about in this entire video, read this book series.
The next series that I want to talk about is The Tiger Saga by Colleen Hook. The main character is Kelsey Hayes, who needed a summer job, so she wanted to go work for the circus. She has to take care of a tiger named Durin, and she later finds out that he's a prince who was cursed to be able to change into a tiger. He convinces her to go with him to India to help break his curse. The series later brings in his brother, who is also cursed to be able to change into a tiger, and it brings in all kinds of ancient monsters, and I highly recommend it to people who like ancient curses and monsters.
The next book is actually a little different than the others because it's by a self-published author. And that book is You and Me Against the World by Raymond Esposito. It's actually the first book in a series, the Creeper Saga, and it's an amazing series. It's about zombie-like creatures called creepers, and it follows a character, Dr. Russell Thorne, as he tries to navigate through this new world. The writing is superb, and it's a really gripping story. If you like zombie stuff, if you like The Walking Dead or anything like that, but you want something a little different, this book series is definitely the one for you. It's got great action in it. The storytelling is great, and you really care about the characters. So when they get into predicaments, you want to see them make it out of it. I definitely recommend this series to anybody wanting to try a self-published author and they're not sure where to jump in. This is the way to go.
The next book that I want to talk about is Darkwood by Emily Breen. It's about a girl named Annie Truitt who lives in a town where everybody stays inside and locks their doors at night because monsters from the forest come and try to take children. After Annie hears what the horrible plans that her aunt and uncle have for her, she has no choice but to flee her home and go to the forest. I highly recommend this book. It's very interesting. It has a bunch of awesome monsters in it and crazy twists.
So the next series is a classic. It's by Anne Rice, and it is The Interview with the Vampire. I actually watched the movie first, and I watched it at a really young age, which I probably shouldn't have been. But once I read the book, I loved the story even more. Some people find Anne Rice's writing to be a little bit dense, and it is a little bit to get through. But once you get into the story, it really pulls you along. The characters themselves carry a lot of weight. I really enjoyed this, and how she took vampires, the direction that she took them in, really makes you love the idea of being a vampire. And you know, when Twilight and other things came out that sort of changed the image of what a vampire was, we lost a little bit of the darkness that goes into it. And this series really has that, and what it means to be a vampire, and how having that disease relates to the world around you. It's a great series, and if you don't mind reading a bit of language and things that we've kind of moved away from, you'll really enjoy it.
So the last series that I want to talk about is the Cirque du Freak books. It's about a boy named Darren Shan who's obsessed with spiders. Him and his friend Steve go to a freak show where they meet the vampire Mr. Creepsley and his spider Madame Octa. Darren ends up stealing Madame Octa, who then later escapes and bites his friend Steve. The only way to save Steve is to become a vampire like Mr. Creepsley and become his apprentice. I highly recommend this book if you are tired of the norm with vampires and it's very captivating.
We can't do a series on horror without talking about Stephen King. And we can't do a series about monsters without talking about the fear monster himself, It. So when I was a kid, I watched the miniseries that they put out, and it terrified me. And then as I got older, I realized I hadn't read the book yet, and my daughter really wanted to see the new movie, so I figured I would buy it and check it out. And I did, and it's massive. It's actually a great book. I enjoyed the series a lot. It follows mostly the kids of Derry as they grow up dealing with Pennywise and learning what the monster is, and it deals some with them as adults and coming back to Derry. There are a few interludes where it talks about other things. One of the characters is actually doing research, so he goes into a lot of the history. Some of that can drag a little bit, but it's a big book, so you expect sort of a slow burn in a lot of areas. The thing I think I like the most about this series is a lot of times with monsters or with villains, you hear about what they're doing or it's alluded to. This one you actually see it committing horrible acts of violence towards children and adults and really anything that comes across his path. And for that part, I actually found it really amazing because it pulls you in. I mean, there's high stakes. You care about the characters that you're reading about. I do have to caution some people. There are a few things here that if you're sensitive to, you may not want to read this book. One of those is language. There's a bit of language that I personally would not use myself that King does use for effect, and he uses it quite a bit. If certain words do, bother you, this may not be the book for you. The other one is a scene that's towards the end of the book, and I only bring it up because I'd hate to recommend this book and somebody reads it and come across this scene, and it does involve explicit sex with very young children. So it shows how good of a book it is that it can contain this stuff, and I would still have it on a list of amazing books. King is a master at what he does, and when he's doing that well, it just pulls you in. So that's going to be it for us today. Those were our books, and I hope you check some of them out and enjoy a good monster story.